Hi, everybody. My name is Kass. I use she, her pronouns. I am based in Washington, D.C. in the United States, and I am a collective imagination practitioner as well as a member of the Fun Circle. And we are here to have a conversation about year one. So much good stuff has happened in year one of the collective imagination practice community, and we want to talk about all of that good stuff. So we're hoping to share some learnings, share a little bit about our experiences, some things we expected, some unexpected things, and hopefully generate some excitement for year two and see what we can bring into year two based on what we learned in year one. I'll pass it to Tim to introduce himself.
Lovely description of what we're doing. Thank you, Kass. I'm Tim. I'm in Leeds in the north of England. I am a bookseller, a regenerative designer, and a rebel economist. So what I'm doing here, I don't really know. Well, I do. I sit on the Fun Circle. Yeah, so I get to see everything that's been happening that we funded through the collective imagination practice community. And that's what I wanted from being here. So it's been amazing. So I've loved everything that we've seen, just kind of, it's like flickering past our eyes in you. I thought, well, look at that, look at that, look at those people, look at that. And then we've seen it all blossom as well at the end. So it's great to be able to share some of that with everyone who's thinking about doing something with our next round. So yeah, looking forward.
I need 30 seconds. I'm so sorry. Hold on 1 second.
Okay.
Go on, Debbie. Why don't you introduce yourself while Kass ducks out?
Hi, y'all. I'm Devyn. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm based in Richmond, Virginia, in the US as well. And I am a liberation guide. I help people rehumanize from this dehumanizing world. I'm also a death doula, an artist, and a collective imagination practitioner. I have had the immense privilege of participating in some of the communities in this collective imagination practice world. And I am so excited to talk about this last year and all we've learned together.
Cool. So Devyn and I both led practice community experiments this year, and I wanted to create some space to share a little bit more about what that looked like. So Devyn, what did you request money for? What did it look like? Who did you invite in? And how did you learn about this opportunity?
So I actually participated in the Death and Imagination Huddle. And that was one of the greatest gifts. Allie called us all in, and I'd heard about imagination infrastructure for like a year and kept searching, like, where is this? Who's talking about it? Who's teaching about it? Where can we learn? And Allie called us into the huddle, where we all got to co-lead this incredible exploration into death and grief and joy, with a completely different lens than, and as a death doula, I've spent a lot of time studying death, and being in this space where death was first generative and where we could all show up with like a lot of gratitude and curiosity around death, and put fear kind of on the back burner. I feel like collectively we have a lot of fear around this thing that is going to happen to all of us. And so to be in a space with people that weren't scared, but excited for the opportunity to be in deeper relationship with death was an incredible experience. And one that I really had no idea what we were stepping into. I think that's something that we all felt. We were like, I don't know what this is going to be, but let's see what we can create together. It was a beautiful, beautiful experience.
Death. It's very interesting to approach death in that sort of generative space and like have a container that holds all of the possibility and not just the fearful possibility. And I'm curious how that experience informed the way that you approached your imagination practice.
It invited me to a different level of play. I use a lot of imagination work in my trauma integration work with my clients. And this one showed me that there's a fundamental need for safety when meeting imagination. And it's something that really landed around the death conversation for me, because we have so much just collective fear and avoidance around death. And so making sure that in every opportunity that our huddle had to come together, there was space for us to like come back to our bodies, come back to safety. And how that is really just so fundamental for the overall well-being and for the collective practice of imagination. Because I think individually, many of us can find our way there, but for us to be able to do it collectively, there has to be some sense of collective nervous system regulation. And so really bringing that in with my clients has been an incredible, like it's just expanded my capacity. I think it's expanded my capacity to do a lot of like group trauma work, which has been a really, really beautiful thing that I hadn't really played with before this experience.
That piece around safety is so key, because that is something that came up in mine as well. My collective imagination practice is called Dream Together, and I wanted to bring together Black, Indigenous, people of color into a virtual space, many of who would identify as neurodiverse or neurodivergent in one way or another, whether diagnosed or not, but not neurotypical in a lot of ways. And to reclaim a lot of dream practices and like the importance of collective dreaming, and how that act of dreaming is like not only a survival mechanism, but also like a strategy towards future visioning, towards like creating a world that we actually all want to live in and can thrive in. And it isn't just, oh, the thing that I do when I go to sleep. And like, I might have some like weird thing that came together and I might remember just a piece of it and just sort of dismiss it as nothing, or as very minimal. And so in that space, I thought it was going to be pretty smooth. Like I had my plan, I had my agenda laid out. I had different intentions or hopes of what I thought would come out of it. And I actually found myself like stalled from the very beginning, because safety was like the elephant in the room that I didn't know how to name until I came out on the other side. I found people just like very resistant to sharing their ideas, sharing their dreams, found people very resistant or hesitant to like even name that this might have been a practice of theirs, or that they even had a relationship to it in this depth, in the way that I was describing. There was some moments of tension where like, dreams started being shared and like ideas started to commingle and shape together. And then there was like issues of ownership and like, oh, well, whose idea is that now? Or like, I want to claim that, or like, you have to put my name on that too. And the lack of safety, or even just the acknowledgement of any community agreements, it became very individualist and very like fraught with tension. It just didn't feel safe anymore. And then I noticed that hindered people from being willing to share even more. It was like, oh, okay, we're going back to sort of like capitalist individualist ways of being immediately. And so therefore I got me and mine, you got you and yours over there, and we're not playing this game anymore, because it was fun and cute while it was light, and then it got serious. And now people's protective mechanisms came out, and that was a challenge to hold as a like facilitator of this practice, as a practitioner of this practice, because the safety and the nervous system regulation is something that I've been doing consistently. And I did not realize how much work it would require on the front end to like get people into their bodies or into a sense of safety in a collective space to be able to like do the fruitful collective dreaming that I had imagined when I first like wrote my proposal.
That's part of it though, isn't it? Like that is learning. That I loved how you said the elephant in the room that I didn't recognize till I got out the other side. That's brilliant stuff. And that's, that's, I guess that's what this is all about, isn't it? It's providing a safe enough space for us all to experiment and discover those elephants, even if we're blindfolded. You kind of have to feel it. What is it? What does this elephant feel like? Does it feel like an elephant, or is it a walrus, or is it a sea lion? What is it? And and so I think it's amazing that we're part of something that can deal with that learning and take that learning as a generative process. You picked up on Devyn's generative word, and that's the thing that really stood out for me, because we're trying to do something with this, but not be predetermined about where we're going to end up. It's more direction, isn't it?
Definitely. Yeah, I think that's one thing that I really appreciated about the call for proposals in the first place, is like, this is all an experiment. Even like the fun circle and how we are a collective body outside of like the traditional funder that is making decisions, and the intentionality of bringing somebody from the practice community into the decision-making process and figuring out, okay, how do we make decisions together? How do we distribute money? How do we like steward resources in an experimental way, in this like light touch way, in this like meaningful way, to people who are like also trying to experiment, who are also trying to do new things and try new ways of being, and in a world where like impact is expected immediately, and scaling up matters more than like scaling deep, and creativity is the first thing that is like cut from resources when you think about schooling, or like job choices, and just the cultural and societal like push against creativity or against social imagination, collective imagination, social dreaming, all of the ways that we describe it. And then to come into a space where they're like, actually, no, like we want you to bring all your experimental stuff. We want you to try that thing. We want to support you in figuring it out, because there's no other space that I have found that like allows for that. And that's something that Devyn and I touched on when we first met. Was like, I think even specifically in the US context, like this work doesn't exist in the same like breadth, or like I'm trying to think of the right word. It isn't as commonplace. The language is not there. The expectation or the cultural norms are not here in the way that I am noticing them show up in other like huddles and practices that exist in Europe. And that's been something to just like notice and be mindful of when I think about where I'm starting and where some of my other, community of practice members are starting, and like who we're engaging. It's a different audience, and there's different societal norms, and there's different barriers and hurdles that you have to walk through and navigate. And I'm curious, Devyn, if you want to speak to any of the ones that you noticed when you were hosting yours.
Well, I would say it's not even that it's not here, it's that there's such deep resistance here to it. I mean, even when you were talking about your experience working with mostly like Black, neurodivergent, queer folks, is like we have like the appropriation and commodification of the Black imagination is so deep in this country that it's unsafe to be in that world, right? Like at one point you said that it was we often connect to our imagination, to our dream space as a survival mechanism. But to do anything different, to actually be visioning and using it to collectively build something new, we have to unlearn, and the unlearning comes in the play of it all. And I think that's one of the things that this space really does offer, is it's not just an opportunity to do this, it's a celebration of it. And that's one thing that we know how to do well, right? We know how to celebrate life. And so it's coming back into that connection to like the celebration and the joy and the beauty of all life that comes out of this practice. I think that's one of the things that enlivens people, that can like really enlist people into this kind of work, is how do we remember that like childlike wonder that we have, that we have almost all had access to at some point in our lives. And that's kind of like what I'm working on building for this next cycle. I'm so excited for this next cycle and all of the things to be created. But like, what are some spaces to invite people into to play in? We'll see. We'll see if I get funding for it. We can make it all happen.
Yeah.
Really strikes me that what we're talking about is outsiderhood, isn't it? And I think it's an acceptance that those views and those societal perspectives that have been marginalized are the ones which we really need to listen to more, and create that safe space to express them authentically. And I think that I joked at the start, I didn't know why I'm here. That's why I'm here. Because in the regenerative practice, it's like, how can we find new ways of seeing the things that we can't see, and doing that together, and taking that with us as we create a different world? Because I guess that's what we're aiming for, isn't it? Even if it's just a different world in our hearts, or a different perspective on something that helps somebody through an experience or a situation. That's all for the positive. And yet, like, we've had such a long time when this has been squashed, squeezed out, not given the space, not given the import that it needs. It's yeah, I'm excited to see where you take it as well, Devyn. I really am, because we're getting to that next level, aren't we? And it's like baby steps, but yeah, we've done some stuff this year, and then it's, well, where does that take us next year?
Yeah, I'm excited to go deeper. And I think that's what year 2 is going to be about. It's like, let's go a little bit deeper. The first year was very much like, okay, we're here and we're trying the thing, and we are figuring out how this is going to work in every aspect, whether it's the practitioners and the practitioner community, the huddles, the seed swaps, the fun circle. Like, how does it all work? How does it all fit together? And then I think this next year is very much going to be a lot about, okay, let's keep experimenting. Let's see which experiments really worked, and like, what are some of those components that really supported them working? And then like, how can we go a little bit deeper in the practice, or how can we stretch ourselves a little bit further? How can we make tweaks to whatever we started the first time, so that we can try it again and see how it lands with folks? And I think that's something I'm really excited about, is okay, now I know how to like plan to establish safety early on, and like build that into the plan, so that I can get to the other things, so that I can see like what sort of shifts that level of safety and embodiment practice allows for, like what fruitfulness and what generativity will come on the other side of that, once people feel a little bit safer in the practice itself. And I'm very curious how naming things like that commodification of Black imagination, or like capitalism, or these other systems, just naming it early on, like, hey, we're trying to do this thing, and we know there are all these other factors and barriers that are like at play right now that nobody necessarily has control over. So like, let's acknowledge all of the elephants in the room, and then see, now that we've acknowledged them, like what can we do? What space do we have to play and like create something on, even in spite of all of those barriers? and how can we like work together to direct that imagination practice towards not necessarily a particular goal, but maybe a particular like vision or horizon or like future casting. I think that something that I wanted to name after what you said, Tim, was hope is a discipline. And it's a little sticky note that I have on my like office wall. And when I think about this work and like its importance beyond just the experimentation, I think about like how important collective imagination practice or being in a creative practice is not, it's a discipline, and like it it fuels your body, it fuels your spirit, it fuels your soul in the same way that like taking care of your mental health and taking care of your physical health by going to the gym or working out, like there are things that you do to take care of yourself. And I really hope that through this entire experience and experiment, people can walk away with recognizing that like being in these creative practices, not just as an individual, but like part of something bigger, is exercising this collective muscle of like creative health and like spiritual health and wellness, um, and it's not something that you can just turn on and off. It's something that you have to build up towards. It's something that you have to like be in the consistent practice of. And when we do that and we're able to like harness that energy even more and direct it towards these specific futures that where like Black and brown people are thriving, where um like donut economics is like a thing, and like more widespread and talked about, like those futures where we're we're seeing each other as whole people, where we are like everybody has what they need, where safety is not something that like is for the few and not the many. That is what really excites me about all of the generative energy that we are creating in our individual practices in these little pockets of the world.
As you talked there about, you talked about creative practice and you talked about collective imagination practice, and Devyn, you were talking at the start about how you used your experience to change your group practices, and as someone who's not core based on collective imagination, can you both help me understand the difference between a creative practice and a collective imagination practice?
Good question.
I think life is a creative practice. When we have space, like every conversation, we're creating this conversation together. You're creating your dinner every night. You're creating your interactions with strangers. You're creating your life every single day. But a collective practice, it requires a tuning in. A tuning into self, but a tuning in, settling into the field that you're co-creating. I don't know that everyone would think of it that way. Like a lot of people don't even think of themselves as artists. I think that everyone is naturally an artist because, I mean, you see people's creative expression in the way they talk, what clothes they wear, the music they make, what choose, the dances they do, all of the things. But yeah, to me, it's like the difference between dancing alone under the sun and dancing in a huge crowd at a music festival or something, right? There are two really very powerful things, but when you see people dancing together really like in the rhythm of the same beat, it's an entirely different thing that gets created. It's deeply powerful.
I love both of those examples. I would say the creative practice tends to be more personal, and it is however you express yourself. So yeah, you can express yourself with a paintbrush or with your voice and make music, or like in the kitchen making goods, or like making clothes, or like whatever your thing is. You might be a writer, you might love to design things, you might like love to tinker, and that can be your own creative practice that you use to ensure like your wholeness and well-being. And then when I think of collective imagination practice, it is bringing those different creative practices together. And it can be either practicing the same one, or it can be like joining a bunch together. And I feel like a key difference is the collective imagination practice has a focus on the collective good or collective well-being. And so when you're engaging in the collective imagination practice, yes, you're an individual, but you're contributing to something bigger than yourself. And you are like in self-awareness and acknowledgement that like my energy affects more than just me. It affects everybody in this room right now. And how I show up impacts the community. I am a person that is in community. I'm connected to like a broader source, a broader like universal energy that is much more powerful than whatever I can do alone. And both are very necessary. Like your creative practice is your creative practice, and you can choose to engage with in that however you want to. And I think being intentional about connecting to a collective imagination practice is like, hey, I've been doing this like work on myself, and now like I need to do this work in community. And it reminds me of sort of this broader narrative that like self-care versus community care. You can only do so much self-care yourself before you like hit your edge. And then at some point, there's just things you cannot do alone. No one person can save the world. No one person can like change all the laws. No one person can like wave the magic wand and like have make peace for all, right? But it's our collective energy in the same way that it requires everybody's energy in a social movement to like towards whatever their goal is. It is that generative collective power that really like sets it apart. It really is what takes it into a whole new direction, because each of our individual energies, each of our individual practices like makes up something a lot bigger that amplifies whatever that collective intention is, or whatever that collective goal is. And so when I think of like even the death and imagination huddle, it's the collective intention that we're not going to place fear on the front burner. It's on the back burner. And so now that we've all set that intention and we've all made like come to that agreement, there's so much more possibility and like other kinds of the conversation that we can have together that we weren't able to have without making that collective intention. So when I think about collective imagination, it's being able to collectively agree on, hey, we're not going to do this thing, or hey, we are going to do this thing, and like let's put all of our energy and power and magic and like secret sauce and like unique essence into whatever that thing is, and see what happens.
I think that's one of the things that I love the most about this practice, is that it also re-educates us on what it is to be in the collective. It like brings us into a new way of being in community, of considering each other, of sharing and holding each other like generously and authentically, with a lot of vulnerability in a way that many of us were never taught.
Absolutely. Very age of Aquarius.
Very.
I'm an individual and I'm part of the collective. And how do I balance both?
And I think that individual as part of a collective, that kind of feels like the thing that you could see in most of the projects that got funded, because occasionally we'd see something and like it's been really, for us on the fund circle, it's been really hard saying no to stuff because we can see the beauty in all the proposals that we get. So I think, like, I don't know about you, Kass, but personally, there's been quite a toll on having to say no to stuff that looks beautiful. But I think the reasons that we tended to say no was so that we could say yes to something else. And that something else, often the difference was that it was in community, wasn't it? It wasn't just an individual practice or something that was very linear and structured and kind of felt like the old paradigm. The stuff that we were looking to support was expansive and divergent and took us somewhere new together. For me, that I guess that's what I was always looking for in the when we're able to say yes to something.
Definitely. And when I think back to all of the applications we were reading, there were so many that started from, hey, this was a personal practice that I had, or this was a personal experience that I had, and I want to share this with other people. And I think being able to make that transition from individual to collective really explicit is really what set the applications apart. There were some folks who are like, yeah, I had this personal experience and I want to share it out, but it's still very personal centered. And we couldn't quite make those connections to like, how is the collective engaged in this? And then there are other people who are like, I did this thing and like, now I know how to scale it up and like, I'm going to bring X many people into this. And we're like, yes, that's exactly what we're looking for. So I definitely, it was hard because I see both. And when we think about the collective imagination practice community, at least our year one goal was like, how do we bring as many people into this as possible? So that's what we were looking for in applications.
Yeah, and I guess that leans into your going deeper. Is that this year it's going to be less about spreading the net wide and more about deepening the sharing of the learning that comes out of it, isn't it? Really, I mean, I was blown away when Zara and Hannah were saying that they started out with a mailing list of 40 and now it's gone up to 500, and I know that's going to make our job so much more difficult because I'm expecting a whole load more applications, and like that's going to be really hard, and so yes, we are looking for that spark that marks something out as being the thing that is going to take us deeper. Obviously, Devyn, you know, it sounds like you're planning on doing something, and so I'd be interested in how this feels. Is this helping you shape up what you're thinking about doing next year, or did you already know?
Well, I've had a project that's been on my heart and I haven't been able to do it alone. I've needed kind of a collective. I tried launching it once. It was like, oh, my body can't do this. This is something we have to hold together. It's called How to Human. It's an opportunity for us to come back to the body and figure out kind of who we are, what our values are, skill build, so emotional intelligence skills, relational connection, embodied relationships building. And I've been building out this program. It's a really beautiful, exciting program. And then when I heard about this, I was like, wait, like the program as it is ends in imagination. And going to the first, when y'all announced the second year of funding, we had that little community connection time to talk about it all. And I realized that what if I just held the entire thing in a collective imagination practice? And so it's been really cool. I've been inviting some of my brilliant, very creative friends in, and we're gonna, can I tell y'all, should I tell y'all what the whole thing is gonna be right now? Yeah, okay.
We can't make any promises.
Yeah, of course. We're designing it's kind of like a LARP, like a story for people to go through, and they're gonna make their character for the like liberated future they want. So maybe you're a mage whose ability is to, give children, their superpower that they've always wanted, right? Like whatever your thing is. Maybe in real life that transfers to you being a teacher who helps children see their, like, neurodivergent children see the gifts in their neurodiversity, right? Like whatever the thing is. And so through this process, you kind of orient to like, what are your values? What are your body's needs? How do you create a community around you that helps support and enliven all of that? And then together at the end, we like, I don't know, we still are like playing with the actual journey of what the story is going to look like that we're going to go through together. But then together, like the last week is this big visioning party situation that we get to do together. I am, God, I'm so excited. Even if it doesn't get funded, y'all, this is happening. This is just like, now that I've really built it and pulled all these people in, we're doing this. We've got artists that we're like courting right now to help like design it so that we get to like visually see the entire thing as we move through it, to like be one, to like build the backdrop, but then to be in every workshop that we have with groups to actually like create live art as we move through the space. So they're literally telling a journey through their own artistic expression. It's going to be amazing.
This sounds amazing. And I hear a lot of like really important connection pieces or elements. I love how the creative space is connected to real world experience. So the point of creating your character in like the really expansive spaces so you can be able to see yourself in all directions, and then being able to connect that to like, well, who am I right this second? And even if I can't be like the mage or the wizard, I can be the teacher, and I can still like support the folks in the ways that I know how, and like be in my strengths and my gifts in this present moment. And I really love that connection between like, it's not just play for play's sake, and it's not just imagination for imagination's sake, but it's how does this, like having the container of limitlessness and possibility, support my day-to-day actions in the present moment.
And I mean, like a lab. I mean, like you couldn't design a program. Yeah, we're going to fund people to come up with collective imagination live action role plays. Like, it just doesn't exist. But that's the beauty. Like the things that people have come up with have been amazing, and like I think that's the thing that gets us excited. Actually, is the people who are going to take this somewhere different, and it's not going to be like the same old ways of engaging people and animating their interest that we've seen time and time again. We need different ways of being, of finding out who we are. And I mean, I couldn't think of a better way of doing it than as a live action role play. That sounds magical and amazing. And I'll be honest, I don't think we've got enough money to pay you for that, Devyn. It sounds a monster. But maybe what we have got enough is to give you enough to get started on it, and enough to learn from it. Because that's, I guess we don't see the funding as the end. Like there is no full stop. You've had your funds, and now it's ended. It's actually it needs to blossom into something else, and that sounds like something that's going to blossom beautifully. Wow. I look forward to that application. Not that any favors have been curried.
Of course not. Of course not. I also really appreciate that there are 2 rounds, because we get to do it kind of on a smaller scale to see what works, what doesn't. And like, this isn't the only grant we'll apply for. If this works well, we're going to want to scale it. And right now, the first one is going to be online, right? So in the future, we would love to do something that was like a retreat. Come to this place for a week and let's go on this journey together, right? Like, so there are ideas and different ways to scale. But there's, plenty of possibilities. We don't have to be limited. And one of the things that I have learned is that money never has to be the thing that limits us. Like, we can be really creative about how we get all the resources we need to create something like this.
Mm. I'm so excited. And it makes me think about like a tweak that we made this year is we're gonna have 2 sessions that folks can come in and like workshop ideas with Tim and I and other folks from the practice community stewardship circle. And so for the folks who have the idea but not quite sure how it's going to come all together, or how do I like shape this in a way that improves my chances of getting funding, we will be available to be in that thought partnership with folks, which I'm really excited about because it's a new space for many people, and to be able to have somebody to bounce these ideas off of is really important.
Not that we know what we're doing. It's not that we know. We don't know anything. All we know is what we've seen that works, and what excites us, and that's so that's one of the things that we look for in the when we're doing the when we're scoring and doing the feedback. One of the things we look for is it exciting us, and if there's nothing there that excites us, then it often doesn't get funded. Because there's something magical in that excitement and in that anticipation of something extra happening. And yeah. So yeah, I'm really and looking forward to getting into those different spaces, because I've had a couple of people get in touch and say, well, I've got this product or this game, and I've been using it in this way, and how could I build on this to do something in a collective imagination practice? And the answer is often, well, it's got to be more expansive than this being a way for you to just grow your audience or your market base or something like that. It's about, well, what purposes could you put that to? What higher purpose can you put it to, and what collective purpose? But it's similar to that thing about people often have got their own practice or their own experience that they're looking to scale up other things that get picked up.
Curiosity. This fun circle. I've been thinking of your dedication to hope. Hope is a discipline. I'm curious, like, what are your hopes for the long term with this fund in this community?
One of my hopes is that folks who like have these projects on their hearts, or like who have been dreaming about them in their own little corner of the world, get the seed money to like be able to bring it to life at least once, to like see the financial investment in something that they may like not think or hold in the same importance because there's not a community or like a large field of work built around it. I really hope that people can see themselves as part of a larger group of people who are doing this work, and to know that it's valid and important and needed. Like that was one of my biggest takeaways, was like, oh my gosh, I feel seen for the first time. Like, money aside, like, what? There's other people doing this. There's a title for this, that like what I thought I was doing, in my little corner of the world, like I thought it was just me, and it was a hobby, and it was the thing I always did on the side if I had extra time. But I really loved it, and like I wanted to just nerd out with somebody about it, and the people around me were like, "That's cute." And so then I come into this world and I'm like, oh, we're all talking about this thing? Oh my gosh, wait, you know the language that I know? Oh, there's new language I didn't know? Oh, there's all this other stuff. There's resources, there's community, there's like infrastructure around this. Great. Okay, that might now switch my whole career trajectory, or like that might switch my whole like game plan in terms of what I was seeing as like something small over here in the side in the corner is like, actually I can more center this in my life and my work and how I think about my purpose. And I just hope other people who are sort of like, I have this love, I have this desire, I have this dream, I have this hope that feels very disconnected from the world around me, can actually see that, no, it matters here and you're not alone, and bring all the creativity and brilliance, and like come up with that radical idea, and please share that radical idea, because actually we want to see that radical idea. Like, don't stuff that one down. This is the place to bring it all out. This is the place to go there. This is the place to like dream as big as you want to, and know that you're going to be held and supported in the process. And there's financial resources around, you know, supporting you making that happen. It's not just a networking space. It's a generative space that is like pouring into you as you pour into community as well.
Yeah, thank you for the I mean, what a beautiful question, Devyn. I'm going to pick up where Kass left off there, because I'm looking for something radical. I am looking for a movement that helps with transformation, because that's what we need. Like, we can't get where we need to get to by taking little tiny steps, or a little bit more of this, a little bit less of that. Can't. A little bit more of something or a little bit less of something is not going to get us where we need, and it's not where real change happens. Real change happens when we have transformation. And like, I mean, look at what's happening in the world. We need change. We need transformation. And it's not going to come from tiny little steps. It's going to come from big change. And that change needs to come from the right place. It needs to come from people's hearts. And that's what I really see in this community is an emergence of a community that's starting to connect. I love Kass and everyone nerding out about it. Brilliant. Like, that's what we need. We need that nerdy, so that those connections form and something new grows upon that layer that starts to form, and then something grows on top of that, and something grows on top of that. That's transformational and not incremental. And that's why I'm interested in collective imagination, because if this can't get us to where we need to go, well, then nothing is. So this is where the future starts. It starts here in these sort of conversations and the imaginings that people have and the movements that they build behind them.
The imagination movement.
Imagination movement.
Power to change the world.
Any like final words or closing thoughts? Anything you want to share into this space before we close?
I think I just want to say thank you to everyone for building this, for the Joseph Rowntree Foundation for being willing to be out on a limb and fund something that's completely radical and different, and to Hannah and Zara for the way that they've held this space and invited Kass and I and so many others in. Yeah, big thank you from me.
I have to second that. I have so much gratitude for this space. And I know we've spent a lot of time in this conversation talking about the people's lack of safety and the problems, the challenges to access community or access imagination. And what I found in this space is safety. I've found in imagination and in the collective, the community that y'all have helped to cultivate and grow. I found so much safety in being seen, being held, and being able to like share my own gifts into the space. It's been such an immense gift. And so much gratitude for all of that.
Echoing both of those. Yeah, I feel grateful to be seen, feel grateful to be able to contribute my gifts, and feel safe to be as creative and radical and imaginative as I want, and for there to be just support and like tapping into my childlike self and childlike energy, and knowing that that's not a bad thing, even as an adult. And I'm really, really excited to see what comes next. I'm excited to see what more weaving can happen. Like, so glad I met you, Devyn. Oh my gosh. Turns out we live only a couple hours away from each other, which is like super cool. So in this like very global community, we're only a few degrees of separation away. So that makes me really hopeful. And I look forward to year 2. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Kass. And thank you, Devyn. It's been lovely to spend a bit more time getting to know you. And I look forward to your proposal landing on our desk.
Me too.